I'm DJ, and welcome to One Shots Tavern, a TTRPG podcast where we seek out new ways to tell your stories through different systems and games. And today, I am joined by Rachel Dove, the founder, creator of Dungeons Not Dating. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, how are you, DJ?
I am doing fantastic. Could be better. Things can always be better.
Fair enough.
First off, what are your pronouns?
She, her.
She, her? Awesome. Dungeons Not Dating is a Tinder-esque way to find your D&D party. Tell me about it. Tell me what your inspirations for this, was.
Exactly. I got into D&D a little bit pre-pandemic, and
Mhm.
I have a very obsessive personality type, so it sort of took over my world. I loved D&D, everything about it. I started creating a new character every single week. But I got into it through friends, a mutual friend group that was already playing, already wanted to do a new campaign. So when COVID hit, I had that solo group of friends, and that was the only social interaction that I got for an entire week because my company shut
Yep.
down. I going stir crazy in my house, singing to my cat, all the normal stuff that people do when they're alone too long. And so I started looking online to join a group, and I quickly realized what a ridiculous
What a
task I was
mess.
facing, especially during COVID. There would be,
Yeah.
1,000 people would apply for a single game with 4 or 5 seats at it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I do have a cat, so I know how to handle rejection, so that wasn't the problem. The problem actually came into play when I finally got into a game. I finally got accepted. I was so stoked to play. I was ready to go. I got to my virtual table to meet everyone I was playing with. And the first comment that was made to me was, "Oh, good. We needed a girl. So, like, we'll call on you when we need you to seduce something."
Oh, no.
And, I was like, I laughed it off. I was like, "I'll give you the benefit of the doubt." So I was like, "Whatever. It's still going to be a good time."
Yeah.
And very soon realized it was not a good time. That was not the table for me, especially as a queer person, a queer woman. Um, just not the right table. And all I could think is that if that had been my first experience with D&D or any tabletop RPG, I probably would have just run away from the community altogether, thinking that
Right.
that's the community. When in reality, this is a very broad and diverse community, and a lot of times it's just about finding the right people at the table. And so that brought about this idea of having a portal where you're not just basing it off of what type of game you
Right.
want to play, but what type of person you are. So that made me think of the dating apps. You can put tags in there, I like sports and craft beer, or I like yoga and water. I don't know, whatever it is. And then, of
Yep.
course, having some of those value tags, equal rights, LGBTQ plus, Black Lives Matter, throwing those elements in. So that way you make
Right.
sure you're at a table where you're respected and accepted and appreciated.
I find that so important in my because I'm a game master for hire. I know we're mutuals on TikTok, but I'm a game master for hire, and so I have to like make sure that I'm putting the things that I stand for
Yeah.
in my game descriptions to specifically like weed out certain players, right?
Yeah.
Because I haven't had a whole lot of bad examples or bad issues or anything like that. But one time I did.
Yeah.
One time a friend of mine like on TikTok was like, "Hey, I want to join your game." And I was like, "Awesome. Sweet. You're joining. It's a great group. I don't know who this one person is, but they're joining. They seem nice." And we had like our sit down where it's like, okay, cool, let's talk, let's introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm DJ. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for like 14 years, 5e since it came out, right? And just going down the line. And then I like moved over to another person and like they told a story that was a lot of information, but like in the context of the group it made sense, and it was like, oh, that's a funny tragic story, like that's it all the rest of us were like not uncomfortable because like it's a very queer group. We're very open with each other. So having someone come in and be like open
Mm,
was great. We're like, this is awesome. We didn't even have to have you here for more than a few weeks before you opened up. And then we got through everyone's name. And then I got to the person I didn't know. And this person was just like, um, well, first of all, that first person who spoke, gave me secondhand embarrassment, and I'm going to now leave. The rest of you seem cool, but I'm done. And then just like removed himself from the server, like this
wow.
whole thing. And we just sat there
But
stunned
wow.
because we couldn't believe that somebody had hopped in and they just for one, right? So here's the one. Like, it's one thing to be, you know, kind of caught off guard when someone shares too much information about their personal lives. It would have been a whole different issue if the guy had just messaged me and be like, "Hey, I don't know how I feel about this guy," right? And then I could have handled it from there and be like, "Oh, hey, they decided they didn't want to." No, instead it was, "I'm going to wait for 35 minutes while all of you introduce yourselves, just so I can specifically insult this
Yeah.
other player." And we were just and of course, it was the first time I didn't record a session. So, like, I was like, "Okay, this is why we record sessions, everyone, so I can keep you all safe." But, like, that
Yeah.
first, impression of a group or that first impression of a game is so important. Like, luckily, those were all people like, all of the players were people that I knew for
Yeah.
longer than, some of them for over a year, within the TTRPG space. But, like, if those were all strangers, like, I feel like I got so lucky that it wasn't strangers 'cause,
Yeah.
that would kinda make me go, "Oh, I don't know if I wanna play at this table after this guy just,
Yeah.
insulted everyone." Um,
Yeah.
but anyways, I digress. Uh, y that awkwardness of, like, a complete stranger group, like, especially, like, pointing out, like, "Oh, you're a woman," is
Yeah.
so uncomfortably awkward.
Yeah.
So I can relate, on different levels. Obviously, I've never been called out for being a woman, but, like,
Yeah.
um, it's just, people I think some people just have a really hard time filtering
Yeah. Yeah.
their thoughts into the world. So, okay,
Yeah.
tell me about what like the layout that you're going for Dungeons Not Dating. So, like you've talked about it a few different ways on like your TikTok and stuff about like it being like Tinder for finding a dungeon D&D group. Tell me how this is going to work.
Yeah, so it's, actually a little more complex than one might think. When you say Tinder for D&D, it sounds very simplistic and easy. But just because of the nuances of D&D, it
Yeah.
makes it quite complicated. So, try to keep it as simple and easy to pick up as possible. So, basically, when you first log in, it is going to use a phone number to verify you and then ask for your personal profile. So, your
Mhm.
personal name or whatever you go by, your date of birth, zip code, and like a few other key pieces of information, including schedule. And then that's where those personality tags and value tags come into play. So once that's done, then you're going to be given a choice of either your DM profile or a character profile. And in
Mhm.
the first version of this, it is going to be only one of each per character. You could do both if you play as a DM and a character, but you're only going to get one of each on the first version of the app. And then that's where you're gonna fill it out as if you were your character, or your DM campaign story.
Mhm.
But you're gonna only select things like your class and your species, your alignment. You'll be able to fill in a backstory, and then some play style elements, the kind of game you're looking for. So it'll have like game themes to pick through. You know whether you want mature themes or family friendly. and things like that. And once you've created at least one of those profiles, that's when you're going to swipe kind of the way you see on Tinder. But the
Mhm.
biggest difference is it's going to be character or game master profile forward. So regardless, you're not going to see, Rachel Dove from Denver who loves adventurous outdoorsy things. You're going to see whatever that character is that I put out there, right? Theo, the
Gotcha.
halfling rogue, loves
Yeah.
chaotic play style and rule of fun and looking for family friendly adventure and fantasy. So you're gonna kinda swipe through that way and decide is this halfling rogue who I wanna play with? And in the back end, we've got the algorithm kind of working, doing its magic to make sure that we like the same virtual play style, to make sure that those value tags are at least somewhat in alignment and our schedule is somewhat in alignment. Oh, and age. We do have age
Right.
incorporated in our back end
Right, because
algorithm
we
as
wanna
well.
keep under 18 together and then over 18 together. No, yeah,
Exactly.
it makes sense. I like that. I like the, this character profile thing, right? Because, I have said this a million times in my life, because it's just something I've noticed, because, I grew up with phones. Um, Men have a really annoying ability to turn everything into a dating app. And I don't understand how, like, I've seen men turn I don't remember what the app was called, but, like, you just posted, like, inspirational little things, and, like, somehow, like, guys were like, you know, M18, Minnesota looking for, and it's like, what are you doing?"
Like, this
So
is a
by
Pinterest board.
this is what do you do? This is a Pinterest board, sir. Uh,
It's so funny.
but, like, somehow
Yeah,
it's just this innate ability. So by, you know, stripping people of their personal identities in that, especially in the beginning, right?
yeah,
And going, okay, cool. What are we looking for? I'm the dungeon master and I want this and that.
mhm,
And it doesn't really matter if my players are like, especially in a for fun sense, right? It doesn't
yeah,
matter who my players are, right?
yeah,
If it's
yeah,
streamed, I can understand, wanting to go with, be able to pick through more diverse players. But when it's just, no stakes, no money exchanged, like you
yeah,
just swipe through and you find your players. So I am, Cedric and I am from Waterdeep, and I'm a artificer is a lot, uh, in my opinion, safer upfront, uh, to for women to and non cis men essentially to hide behind a picture for a bit, at least until they get to know the group. So
yeah,
um, right
exactly.
now it's Dungeons and Dragons focused. Um,
Yes.
do you have any thoughts about adding some other games, for example, like Call of Cthulhu, right? Being able to
Mhm.
like select drop down menu, and uh, filter by the people. I know it's like you're not going to see
Yeah,
as many people,
yeah.
but the option would be cool.
Yeah, so I actually am planning to integrate that probably in about the 3rd iteration of the app, um, because it's come up a bunch, and I know that there
Yeah,
are other tabletop RPGs that are just as fun, just as amazing, just as cool. So it's definitely something that I want to integrate sooner rather than later. It does have to be done pretty systematically though, since it
right,
is match based. That was just my biggest fear, if I had 12 different tabletop RPGs and only 100,000 users. I know 100,000 sounds like a lot, but in each of those different games, you're also going to have those age considerations, those schedule
right,
considerations, those geographical considerations, those virtual platforms, all these different things. So now if you're a kid in the middle of Minnesota who uses fantasy grounds for this one niche game, what are the odds that there's another under 18-year-old in the same time zone with the same schedule that also wants to play that one niche game? So it is something where it's going to be built out very, very systematically, the
Mhm.
same as with in-person gaming. So the in-person gaming that's coming too, but that we're aggregating zip code data to make sure that we've got the user base to support before we launch in person in any one
Right.
location. So for the other tabletop RPGs, I'm kind of planning to just insert a survey. If it's like your 10th swipe, you're going to get a little survey that says, what's another tabletop RPG you're interested in playing, and then whatever the
Right.
number one, number two, number three are. Now we're going to add a filter for that, and people can start using it for that one too. But yeah, it's coming. It's just not gonna be at the jump of it.
That makes sense. So at first, this is gonna be online focus just because of the ease of it. Because we had talked about that a little bit. Um, but eventually, possibly, doing, in-person games, because that's one of the things that really kind of interests me, because as a start playing game master, I would love to offer my services to people in the area, mostly because I just want to roll dice. I've got so many of them. uh,
Yeah. It brings a whole new element to the game too. It's so fun.
yes, it
Yeah,
really
I love in
does.
person. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are the what are your current like thoughts on when you'll roll that out, or do you I know it's
Yeah.
also a big undertaking because you have to, it's a new set of data that you got to take into account, into account, radius,
Yeah.
distance.
It is gonna be, a pretty big thing, but honestly, it's gonna go location by location. So when you very first sign up, one of the first questions we ask it after like your name and everything is for your zip code. So basically, what we're gonna do is just look at that zip code data, and then let's just say, I'm here in Denver. So let's just say Denver all of a sudden has a bunch of
Mhm.
signups, a bunch of users. It's gonna be based on that. So we have a large enough user base in Denver. So now I'm gonna be able to just on the messaging of the app, send out a blast and an email to all of our Denver users and say, hey, congrats. You all in this Denver metro area are now
Mhm.
eligible for in-person gameplay. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to do like an event launch of that,
Right.
and then anyone who wants to set their preference from virtual to in person, they're just gonna have to submit just a little bit of extra security, on the app, just like with a dating app to have a verified profile. I think it's like you take the selfie, your driver's license together.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I am
That
gonna
way, if somebody decides to become an axe murderer, at least you know who they were. uh
exactly. Yep, you're gonna have to do that before you turn that in-person toggle. But yeah, and then we'll have that zip code radius
Yeah.
and everything. But yeah, so it's just gonna get rolled out that way as soon as we hit an area, and of course, it is gonna be a big deal because I'm gonna have to take into account the populations in different areas, right? Because I know you mentioned you're
Yeah.
from Michigan. If I say, "Hey, we've got 100 users in Michigan," um, that's not that many for all of Michigan. But if you say, "Hey, you've got 100 users on the island of Kauai in Hawaii
Right.
in the state of Hawaii,"
Yeah, yeah,
that's that's
yeah.
a huge number. We can roll in person out for the 100 people on a tiny island. So yeah, there's gonna be a lot of research going into that and, a lot of different things, but probably our first, 5 to 10 major cities will be able to do a big in-person launch and have an event, like a little D&D tournament and partner with a local game shop or something.
Yeah, I think so. I think it also really depends on the state, right? Because like look at California, and you were to say, okay, cool. I have somebody who is in the north side of San Francisco, and somebody who is on the south side of Oakland. It might take them over an hour and a half just to go that short distance.
Yeah.
But you look at Michigan, and we talked about you are familiar with Michigan.
Yep.
Um, I live in Jackson. So like for me, if I were to look for a game and I see one in Lansing, that's like
Mhm.
40 minutes away. It's about the same distance or less than Oakland to North San Francisco.
Yeah.
But like traffic is significantly lower.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of those big considerations. I so here's the thing, the funny thing. I in 2020 uh wanted to make this app so bad. I have somewhere like all of my like business plan stuff from it. But the problem was I don't know how to code. And my friend who did was like, "Well, you could just take a Google class." I didn't want to take a Google class. I have ADHD and autism. I either I'm not going to
Yeah.
be into it or I'm going to be too much into it and it's going to become my whole life. Uh so I gave up pretty quickly and then, I saw Start Playing and I was like, why aren't you guys doing this? And I was just like, here's all of my ideas. Uh,
Hey.
take them.
Yeah.
But no, like this is a great idea because 2020 did this thing where we all switched to online games. Um, for better or for worse, and many people are just really stuck in it, right?
Yeah.
Um, I played with the same group of people for 10 years. We haven't played in like 3 lately
Oh,
because
yeah.
like kids, jobs, life, all that stuff. And then I
Yeah.
started, running games for hire. And like I look at my average game, and my average game has like 2 people in California, uh, 2 people in Europe, and then a couple from the Midwest,
Huh. Yeah.
depending on what time it is. So my afternoon games typically I made them to attract my European customers.
Yeah.
Not unfortunately, I love all my customers, but like ends up apparently 3 p.m. Eastern time, which is noon in California, is really popular for the West Coast
Oh,
for
okay.
like third shifters and stuff. I didn't know that. Uh, I would have had no idea.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
so
that makes sense.
it's well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like you
Yeah.
would expect for a West Coaster, it would be, at least 5 p.m. their time,
Yeah.
maybe 6 p.m. their time. But like I'm just finding that people have such a variety of like widespread scheduling that I understand why nobody can get anything done. Uh because like um a few of my players, well, actually, one of my nights, they're like, "Hey, let's play more games together. We love
Oh,
this. We
nice.
want to play as many games together as possible." I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." They're gonna start their own games with each other. But then they realized they couldn't because when they signed up for my game, they signed up for that time slot because that was their time that they had free.
Oh, gotcha.
So all of a sudden they realize, oh, right, we all have different schedules. So
Yeah.
that's why I really like this. As a concept, is giving people the ability to actually play a game and possibly in person once you get enough users in an
Yeah.
area to actually have like an in person game with people that are like-minded and like scheduled and nearby and can bring the snacks and can somebody brings the pizza, all the
Yeah.
things that you need to do, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just
Exactly.
droning on. I love the idea, that's
Ah, well,
all.
thank you. Yeah, the other unique aspect of this too is it does give more autonomy to the players because that was another thing that I just really felt like was missing in the virtual world. You apply and then it was like one person just gets to kind of look through and cherry pick and say, "Oh, okay, I want you, you, and you."
Yeah.
And the players just kind of get to the table and it's either get along or go home. Whereas with this model, you're all kind of mutually swiping, right? As a player, I get to swipe on other players, I get to swipe on DMs, and then there's the group chat where now we're all gonna facilitate and decide, hey, are we actually gonna play this or not? But it just gives a little bit more autonomy, even if you're the one who starts the group chat, I still have autonomy to say, "Hey, I really wanna add my friend. We need a cleric. I found someone, they're perfect. I'm gonna add this cleric into this chat. What do you guys
Right.
think?" So it gives a little bit more autonomy, spreads it out a little more evenly, so it's, hopefully will create a better experience for people and give people that feeling of, I'm a part of this from the start, you know?
Yep. And that's always a super important feeling. I find that some of my dropouts are often just due to like, oh, you guys are like 50 sessions and sure, you're nowhere near the end, but like, I don't understand this party. I'm like, yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
right?
I'm
Like
the rookie
it's
walking
like
in. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's that you're the person who's going walking into like a friend group. You got
Yeah.
invited, and you're like missing out on all the inside jokes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it even is kind of a weird feeling because I've done this
Yeah,
before too, where it's an established group. So everyone else at the table is like taking really specific notes, like, "Oh, we found a book on such and such and such, but this page was missing." And I'm literally over here like, "Okay, GM equals DJ. Got it. Yep, I'm gonna remember your name now. Hold on, what's the tiefling's name?" And it's like,
yeah,
it's a different feeling. Everyone else is over here, like, talking about the contact they made 5 sessions ago, and I'm like, "And your name again?"
yeah, yeah. Um, it's funny because I've got a player who asks for the recording of every session,
Oh, wow.
specifically so he can take it, feed it into like his own podcasting program so he can take the transcript of it and transcribe that into his Obsidian notes. So he
Wow.
knows exactly everyone's name at any point. So if I've forgotten something, all I have to do is say, "Hey, what was the name of that NPC that you guys talked to last session?" And he'll be like, "Oh, on it," and then he'll
That's
find
so
it
cool.
uh, because of it,
Yeah.
he's been able to track, like, the inside jokes as data
Wow.
points. So, for example, we have a player who is playing a ridiculously old halfling,
Okay.
uh, and she's just grumpy, and she likes pickles. And he goes, "Hey, do you guys wanna know how many times pickles was mentioned in that last episode or last session?" We are like, "I don't know." He goes, "158."
I love this.
I'm like, "That is too many." And now all of a sudden our ads on our phones are all giving us ads for pickles.
Makes
And we
sense.
all had to make sure we had pickles in our fridge for game night. Uh, But,
Aw,
every
that's so
player is
fun.
so different, because, like, then
Yeah.
I have another player who she takes meticulous handwritten notes, like, so good, but every time she's like, "I have no idea what's going on." I'm like, "You do. I think you have more idea what's going on than some of the other players who are just here to goof off. Come on."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, no,
Aw.
but, I mean, every table's different. It's a different chemistry, and, like, finding
Yeah.
that right chemistry, like, I mean, it's like making ooh, that was some thunder.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah, I
that
can hear
actually
that.
scared me.
Wow. Alright, yeah, you really are
Um,
getting some of the
yeah,
blowback up there.
uh, but, where was I?
Oh,
Thunder
it ju
gets me.
yeah, just the different dynamics of different groups.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. It
very cool.
comes out to forming a completely different bond at every table, right? It is just a completely different vibe. You could share some of those members between several different tables, and none of the tables are going to have the same chemistry. And I think that's one of the like important things where like you were talking about being able to swipe, and be like, oh, this person has, tags that are similar to mine. This person likes the things that I like, whatever, and in game, and find somebody that is going to, fit in the square hole better, even if they're not, the square. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and a lot of times too, especially working with such a vast, diverse community, you're gonna get
Mhm.
people who still kind of feel like that outsider if they're not with similar folks, right? When I think about the queer community, the trans community, you mentioned having autism. When I think about folks with n- any kind of neurodivergent
Yeah.
or just a disability, right? They might not feel comfortable or like they can be authentically themselves and play the way that they want to play if they're not at a table with other folks who fit into that same category as them maybe, or at least one other person at the table, right? It's nice to have
Hmm.
one ally, one friend you kind of relate to. Myself, I like to make the occasional gay joke or have my character dress in drag, and if I'm at a table with people where that's so foreign to them, it's gonna feel weird. But if I'm at a table
Right.
of queer people, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll get in drag too. I've got a disguise. Yeah, you know what? I'm proficient in this. Let's go." Rolling my persuasion with or my performance with a +6, like, we're all doing drag tonight. And it just brings in some more of those joyous occasions, happy, weird little elements in the middle of
Yeah.
otherwise serious gameplay and allows people to get a little bit deeper, a little bit more emotional and intent with their play, I feel like.
Yeah. One of my tables has kind of found that, right? And it was funny because, like, when they started off, everyone was so shy. Just incredibly, just like, not letting on who they as a person are, let alone who their character was. And then they really, like, I don't know, it was like lightning in a bottle with this group, where they were just able to relate so well,
Yeah.
and they realized how similar they were with each other. Like, it was amazing. And all of a sudden, like, they're so comfortable. It's probably too comfortable. They took over the last like 3 sessions where I just sat there. Um,
Yeah,
because they decided they wanted to all sit down and just have a conversation about goals. And, like,
yeah.
I'm like, okay, so you guys are paying me like $25 right now each. Um,
And you're just talking to each other. Yeah,
and I'm just
that's
sitting here
cool.
listening. Like,
Yeah.
I'm on camera, like, just really intently listening to their role play, because I'm like, oh, I
Yeah,
can't really dive in. Like, they're working through stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's that cohesion that comes with, like, familiarity, and having common ground, and
yeah,
finding out that you have common ground, that is so helpful. Um, it's what I think, looking at your product, right, your app, that separates itself from, if I were to just look for a game on the Dungeons and Dragons Discord,
yeah,
right? Um, People do it. Sure, it works. But, like, you don't know any of those people, and a lot of those tables don't last very long.
yeah.
Or, I don't want to, like, I really like Roll20 as a company, but they're looking for game feature. Is it's another one of those situations where it's like, sometimes you don't really know what you're getting into
Yeah,
when you sign up for a game on Roll20, with strangers, and it could be a fairly abusive time. That's not Roll20's fault, but, it's just that weird forum looking for game, kind of thing. So, uh, you live in Denver, you said.
yep.
Um,
Mhm.
I was thinking of Washington for a second. I was like, "That's not the same place. That's
Yeah.
not nearly, across the country enough." Um, I just, well, because
Well, like,
everybody
close
in
enough,
the
yeah.
TTRPG space seems to live in Seattle, because that's where all of the game companies are.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that. But Colorado is nice.
Yep.
It's you said you lived in Michigan for a while. So
Yeah.
you get to have summer you get to have snowy winters that get to be warmer during the day. So,
Exactly. Yeah,
that sounds
Michigan was
great.
way too cold for me in the winter, summer, cool, fall, awesome, favorite. Fall, Michigan is my favorite, but as soon as winter hit, I
Yeah.
just wanted to hibernate. Like, I was like a bear, like, people would invite me out, and I'm like, "Are you kidding? No.
Well,
If
that's the
you wanna
perfect
see
thing,
me, come
right?
over."
In the TTRPG community,
Yeah.
because we have these really cold winters, now I just find I'm, like, I'm breezing through them because I don't leave the house,
Yeah. Yeah, oh, you're
because I'm
so
just
shy.
playing my games. So I'm like, "Oh, man, I'm even more stoked anytime winter comes around because I know that I can just sit in my office and play my games and not have to look at it outside." Uh,
Right. Yeah,
but, yeah, it's, uh
fair enough, fair enough.
yeah. So, uh, you're currently kind of doing alpha-ish testing right now.
Yeah.
I know I signed up because I didn't get it, but,
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
it's been a process. Like
yeah,
you, I am not a coder. So I, quit my corporate job in January, and I trusted myself to learn the design stuff, using Figma and
yeah,
everything. I'm not great at it, but I'm okay at it. So, for the coding and just refining the design, I was like, "Ah, I gotta go with a real company, I gotta go with a developer." And, that's that's been a process. So,
yeah,
yeah, they promised me my beta about 2 months ago now, and we're still not where we need to be for me to feel comfortable putting it out to the world quite yet, but,
right.
it is coming. It's coming very soon.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, because
Yes.
I mean, it makes sense, right, having to go with a company because, like, there's
Yeah.
when you're tackling something this large, you are relying on it to be a safe product that is minimally exploitable. You can never really do unexploitable, right? There's always going to be some sort of bug or whatever. But that was one of the reasons why I didn't even start with the learning how to make an app because I was just like, oh, but
Yeah.
all of the safety stuff and all of the compliance stuff and like what do I want to do as far as like the intensity of what messaging is allowed on the platform and you
Yeah.
know is everybody going to get thrown into a group chat or are they going to individually chat with the dungeon master or like it just snowballs and then my anxiety says no, I'm good.
Yeah.
uh
Yeah. There's
so,
there's a lot to it, so
yeah.
yeah. It's
Yeah, especially because,
yeah.
like, I mean, right now you're just doing the US, right, for it?
Yeah, US and Canada is where it's
Yeah,
gonna start, but yeah, I've
yeah,
already gotten a lot of interest in, honestly, all over the world. But yeah, I've gotta start somewhere, so
yeah.
yeah.
Well, my suggestion,
Yeah.
would be if you take the approach of building it, build it according to the EU, privacy guidelines. That
Oh.
way, when you if you decide to launch in the EU, you're
Yeah,
already compliant, and their guidelines are more strict than the United States is,
that makes a lot of
as a
sense.
possibility.
Yeah.
But I don't. I wish I
Yeah.
had all my notes. I would just send them to you.
Yeah. Hey, I'll take all the help I can get.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about your first Dungeons and Dragons character. Um,
Oh.
I want, yeah, just all of it.
Yeah, well, okay, so I'll tell you a ridiculous story.
Yeah.
This is not a game that I ever thought that I didn't know anything about Dungeons& and Dragons. I had an ex who wrote on our calendar and said D&D with Victor and Alex, which is another couple we hung out with. So I was like, D&D with Victor and Alex, cool, dinner and drinks. Sounds great. I'm so down for dinner and drinks. Is it at their place? How are we going? How, whatever. And she was like, "Oh, it's at their place. We're just gonna go over to their house and whatever." So we show up that night and I'm, ready for dinner and drinks and they've got like just this plethora of snacks and a weird little game board and
Yeah,
um Victor is an artist, so he actually took like a lazy Susan and texturized it and made a little grid on that. So it was
that's
like
cool.
a
So you
really
could spin
cool.
the map.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah.
super cool. And I was like, what is all this like nonsense? What's going on here? And they get out the player handbook and they're like, what do you want to play? And man, I was so overwhelmed. I was like, I have no idea. So, I'm thinking about this very like strategically. I'm like, this is like Monopoly. We're gonna play for like 6 hours, all yell at each other and then leave and never talk about it again. So I'm like, how do I
Sometimes.
make yeah. Well, like, how do I make the most of my character? So I was like, all
Yeah.
right, I want the buffs from the drow to match with a wizard, and like that's what I'm gonna do. And then they're like, oh, are you sure about drow? So I changed to a tiefling, still got, the charisma buff, all this stuff, and I like built this cool wizard named Anarchus. And then the DM is like, it's my first time DMing, it's your first time playing. A wizard is a little bit of a heavy character. You need to make a lot of big decisions really early on. And I was like, early on in a 6-hour thing? Sure, whatever, I don't care, still not understanding the concept.
That this
Um,
is your life now?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so that campaign actually lasted, I wanna say, like, not like 3 years or maybe not quite 3
Yeah.
years, but I met, I knew some of the folks, I met 2 new folks, and they're still 2 of my closest friends to this day. But, yeah, it was pretty cool though, but at first it didn't click for me right away. I was all about, like, the power build, like, how do I make the most of my wizard,
Yep.
and I didn't even realize so much of the role play, and then by the time I figured that out and I got into it and I started, all my nonsense, it just consumed my life. I had my character had a crush, so she wrote, like, this medieval, lesbian poem in
Yep.
Elvish, and it was a whole thing. But but yeah, it
Yeah.
was it was great, but no, I had no clue what I was getting into. Probably would not have started with a wizard had I known, but
No. Yeah. I still don't even wanna play a wizard because,
it's a lot.
I like the half casters or even the quarter casters, right? Like I love being a warlock. I love being a
Yeah.
paladin. I know a lot of people don't like paladins, but you know what? Fight me. Uh, and
Paladins are cool. They have some cool
yeah, or the
stuff.
bard. Bard
Oh, yeah,
is
yeah.
more of a full caster, but like
Yeah.
those are the type. But when it comes to wizard, I have to like think about what spells I want so I can tell my dungeon master,
Oh,
to
every
possibly
day.
throw a scroll in my way.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. And yeah, you got to pick them
Yeah.
every single day. And it's like, no, I'm good. That's a lot of responsibility. I just want to hit something.
Yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah, it's
um,
a lot.
so you started with fifth edition then, when
Yeah,
you, yeah. Okay.
yeah,
So I started, I think we're probably I don't actually have no idea. I think we're roughly the same age, but I
probably.
started with 3.5 in high school.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
was it in high school? Sounds right. Yeah, high school. And it was difficult because it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And then, like, shortly after that, we switched to Pathfinder.
Okay.
Because and I was like, "Oh, can't we switch to this 4th edition?" And they were like, "No." And now we all regret that decision because we wish we would have learned 4th edition. But whatever, it happens. The thing I hated about Pathfinder back then was when you rolled a natural 20, you had to roll to confirm your crit. So you would
What?
roll your natural 20 and it's like, "Cool,
Okay.
I got a natural 20. This is critical." And then the dungeon master or the game master would say, "All right, roll your d20 again and see if you can confirm the crit," which just meant that you had to successfully hit on the second attack. So like if your
Oh,
proficiency bonus was plus 6, even though you got that natural 20, if you rolled 6, that's only a 12. Sorry, you missed. So you didn't get your critical. The
wow.
worst. And then after that, uh, Critical Role started to become really, like, big, and I had already like, I had been listening to it when they started their podcast, platform because like, I was working heavy labor excuse me, heavy labor jobs, so, like, it was
Yeah.
just 12 hours of me at a machine, and I'm just listening to a podcast, and so, like, I switched to 5th edition, and then, like, we got back together as a group, and we played in 5th edition, but
Yeah.
my first ever character was a really uppity ranger named Arya Mithril Blood. He was like an elf and he was
Okay.
lawful good. And my friend Will, and those who have listening, Will's been on the show a couple times. But like he he was a chaotic neutral halfling rogue. And so he would do things that my character would catch him doing, and I was so serious about it at the time, just way too serious about it. So like, um, my character would not allow him to pick the pocket of that person. Uh, and
I go tell them and make him return the gold
yeah,
and
essentially, I was
apologize.
basically playing a paladin, but I was a ranger. Uh, and so it was real silly,
So
to
funny.
and I feel like that's how a lot of people start out when they
Yeah.
start D&D for the first time is like either they don't pay attention at all and they're just like, "Oh yeah, whatever," or they're just like dialed in and they're like way too serious about their character and like, that's what my
Yeah.
character would do. And eventually I think everybody kind of grows out of that and,
Yeah.
grows up
Yeah.
to the point to where they are able to accept that, um maybe their character is as nuanced as a normal person can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And leave room
uh,
for character growth.
yeah.
I've had that at
Yeah.
tables where someone starts with one character and they level up, but the character is exactly the same at level
Exactly the
20 as they
same.
were at level 1, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"You know, your character can develop a little,
Yeah.
yeah. They can get better or
You can
worse."
keep talking about how sad you are about your dead parents, but, like, at the same time, in game, it's been, like, 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's
Come
like, "Man,
on.
okay, you
We
can."
killed the dude who killed them. Get over it. Uh
Yeah. Your characters can evolve. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Very true.
listen, people at home, your characters can evolve.
Yep.
Character growth is a wonderful thing.
Yep.
And if there's an
Beautiful
aspect of
thing.
your character that the rest of the table doesn't like, maybe it's something they can work on.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had, in-game interventions before, you know? I had a character
Yes.
who was, actually a halfling rogue, but he was a little orphan and just looking for love in all the wrong places and would hit on every single NPC, but wasn't super charming, so it didn't really go too well, and finally, one of my party members sat my little character down and was like, "Hey, I noticed you really wanna find a partner. If we help you find a quality partner and you don't, you know, maybe isn't the best way to go about it." And my party helped my character find a little boyfriend and,
Yeah.
help me with the relationship. We would write a message to my boyfriend every night as we were adventuring, and they'd be like, "Is that how you wanna say it? That doesn't sound appropriate. Rethink this." And like, and it was really fun,
Yeah,
the little
exactly.
in character interventions teaching me to be a great boyfriend and, you know, good times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so we're running out of time here.
Oh,
So, is there anything you would like to cover about Dungeons Not Dating, or you, or where they can find you, or anything like that before we pop off?
yeah, yeah. So, there are a lot of exciting things coming in the future for Dungeons Not Dating. I've got a really big vision for it. So you can find me. I do have a website, dungeonsnotdating.com. That's where you can still sign up for the early access. As I mentioned, it's been a little late, but it's coming. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok under Dungeons Not Dating and Facebook under D Not D. So you can find me on the socials. And you're also gonna see me pretty soon, on TV in a couple of spaces. So I
Oh,
did, go hopefully represent our community well on a TV show called The Blocks. You'll see a lot of me there when my season airs. I'll be on season 17. And then I actually just got accepted and invited to pitch to Kevin Harrington, who's the OG Shark Tank guy. So I'll have that
Nice.
episode coming out soon. Um, and yeah, really, really just kind of getting out there everywhere because my vision for Dungeons Not Dating does not stop at a Tinder knockoff. Definitely wanna incorporate things like that international expansion, like the in-person gameplay, but more importantly, things like an artist marketplace so that there's just one space to get all your D&D needs taken care of and to help promote some other small businesses, like folks who make the custom dice, the character portraits, um, D&D journals, whatever it may be, uh, trying to integrate that in eventually, and finally, eventually, hopefully, integrating an actual D&D therapy portal, because there are a lot of healthcare providers
Yeah.
that use D&D for play therapy, but have a hard time connecting with the appropriate client group for their speciality. So that's another thing on on the horizon for Dungeons Not Dating. So a lot of cool stuff. So please keep up with me on the socials. I'll be announcing when each various episode comes out that you can see us on, and also each new feature will be announced there in plenty of time for folks to ramp up for it and get excited before those releases come out.
Fantastic. Well, you can also find that website down below in the links section, as well as at the very least, the Dungeons Not Dating TikTok. And of course, if you like what we're doing here at One Shots Tavern, you can head over to oneshotstavern.com, check out our Patreon, where you can support us and follow us on all of our socials. But Rachel, thank you so much for joining me here on One Shots Tavern. If you had any advice for a new player playing D&D, what would it be?
Ooh, that is a good one. I think my biggest piece of advice would be don't wait to get started and don't be afraid to ask questions. It's such a collaborative environment, such a collaborative and, community. No one's going to get mad at you for asking, how do I roll persuasion? Where do I
Right.
find that on my sheet? Everyone wants to help you get started. Don't wait. Find a game shop. It's a really cool community.
All right. Well, once again, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.